Good morning, everybody. Hope you guys had a good, restful weekend. Can't say that happened for everybody, but I'm hoping everybody that did have one enjoyed it. For those of us who had to work or do something less fun, I'm with you. Monday never really showed up; it just kind of flowed into the weekend. We have another great interview set up today. Today, my guest is Roberta Foster. She'll be giving her story here today. Um, Asking that you guys listen with attentive ears because a lot of things may slip through the crack if you're not intently listening to the story. And it may bless you in some way, shape, and form. I'm sure this one will indeed. So without further ado, here is Roberta. Welcome. How are you doing
Hi,
today?
I'm good, Marlon. Thank you for
Good,
this
good.
opportunity. I appreciate you having me
You,
on.
you are welcome. Um, I'm going to give you the usual 2 or 3 minutes to share your synopsis of your story,
Okay.
and I'll pop back in when it's time to begin.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So, hello to whoever's listening today. I hope what I share is able to help you in some way to push through the trials you might be going through. Um, but I grew up in an alcoholic home. My dad was an alcoholic. So it wasn't a peaceful environment. I grew up in, kind of fearful. My mom got pregnant with me at 15, and my dad was 17, and so I grew up in a household with very young parents. But thankfully, they had me. They didn't abort me, right? So I'm happy for that. I'm here. Um, and when I was 15, my dad was murdered by a guy on drugs. He was at somebody's house. Because of his drinking problem, he probably should have been home with his family, but he was not. And this man who killed my dad, his father owned the town, and he was in the mafia. So there was never any justice for his murder. But basically, this man who killed him was shooting up the house earlier, and the police never took his gun or locked him up because of who his father was. So there was never any justice ever for this. Whenever we tried to get justice, it was just shut down and no one would touch it. So a violent crime does change who you are. And there are probably people who will watch this who have been touched by that. And I hope at the end maybe to share some things that might help you. So after that, what I did was shut down at 15 years old. And basically, I would describe it as being numb. And I went into alcohol, drinking at 15, smoking pot. And I did that really for the next 8 years. And when I would drink, I would get drunk, like pass out drunk, like I didn't remember getting home, that kind of thing. It was really bad. And then when I was driving, I guess by 16, you get a permit. I would look out the window to see how I got home. I mean, that's how bad. And many times my friends would say, you would always start either yelling and being nasty or be sitting there crying. So I was pushing down the pain. But a good 10 years later, 12 years later, is when I dealt with my father's pain of losing my father. And I got ministry, I got deliverance ministry, and I began to get well. And I also had met my husband during that time, and we both got saved, which for those who may be watching this aren't saved means accepting Jesus as our Lord and Savior. And our lives began to change. And my husband, Keith, I'm going to share in a few minutes that he passed on, but he was very instrumental. I was married to him 21 years, knew him 24 years. He was very instrumental in my healing, in that I didn't really love myself. I would push him away. But what happened was he started embracing me and speaking loving affirmations to me. It was really a God kind of thing. And at first it would just make me sob and cry. I get choked up now just talking about it. But he would say all the things a father should say to his little girl, like, I love you, you're pretty, you're beautiful, I'm so proud of you. And at first those things he was saying were so heartbreaking to me But then I started receiving it, and it was just like, wow, it's true. And I started getting healed through many different avenues in ministry and counseling and different things, and his unconditional love toward me. Because of the violent crime of my dad, it produced rage. So that was part of my deliverance, was getting delivered from rage. It didn't take much to set me off but I didn't know my dad's death was the root of it. But a violent crime will produce rage, especially when there's no justice or anything like that. So in this marriage, I also had a son and a daughter. And I loved them both so much. But my son did have a pervasive developmental disorder from 6 months on. And in 2012, he developed schizophrenia on top of that. And presently, he is in a group home. And this morning, I was at the emergency room because he was having an episode. But I knew to come on the show that I was not going to let that stop me. And that's kind of how I live my life. You know what? You could fold it up and just give up when different things happen in your life. But I kept choosing to not give up and keep focusing on God and focusing that there's a reason why I'm here, to help other people with the different pain and trials that I myself have gone through. So also thrown in there was a second marriage after my husband died. Two and a half years later, I was running from the pain because I had heavy grief for 2 years when he died, because I thought he was going to be healed. I was in a hyper faith thing, and that did not happen. And it was devastating for my children and me when it didn't happen with healing. And so I remarried too quickly. The guy had a criminal record, never told me, had AIDS, HIV, never told me. I never got anything, God protected me, but I had to end the marriage. But I did fall in love with this person, actually met them in a church, so be careful out there. Don't meet anybody at a church, I hate to say that, but I haven't had good experience. So, this was a lot of heartbreak, and I'm leaving out a lot here.
Oh, no, you're not leaving. We'll cover it. We'll get to it.
Yeah. So, and then my daughter, as I go through a divorce, this guy was destructive and pitted my kids pitted us, against each other, threatened all kinds of stuff constantly. And once I got a divorce or whatever, my son then got the schizophrenia. My daughter then, his son died of a heroin overdose. She went out there to the funeral, and she decides to move to California, the other side of the country. And she lives in Los Angeles to this day. That was 8 years ago. I was in a low-grade depression because I was by myself. I was sitting there saying, I used to have a family sitting around this table, and now it's just me. And I was eating dinner for the first time by myself, and it was a hard pill to swallow. The dog died too, you can't make this up. I was like, okay, no dog now. And so it was just a series of losses. And I just can't believe I am where I am right now. And it's all the Lord. Yeah.
So question, let's kick this off then.
Yes.
We'll start with your father. What was the relationship like between you and your dad?
You know what? With an alcoholic, there really isn't one. I have two memories of my dad. One was sitting on a couch watching Creature Feature, and the other was he asked me once to go with him he was a hunter. He hunted deer to pick up some stuff at Ray's Sport Shop in New Jersey.
How old were you when he died?
15.
15.
Those are my only two memories besides him being drunk.
Did you intentionally try to foster a relationship with him, or did the alcoholism keep you from trying to do that?
I think it kept me from trying because I was afraid of him.
Mm-hmm.
When he came home, he was nasty. I could hear him thumping up the stairs. And I remember just being a kid laying there like scared to death that he was going to hurt my mom, because he would say stuff like, I'm going to throw you out the window. And all, as a kid, you're laying there like, oh my gosh, so.
So did you ever figure out what the relationship was between him and the person that killed him?
From what I understand, he was returning a gun scope that he borrowed from somebody there, and he met them there. And apparently this man who was very wealthy, his son had major issues and was firing a gun off earlier in the day. The police came, but they didn't take away the gun. They didn't bring him in because of who his dad was. And so later that night, he was deranged, and he shot my dad. And I think he got sentenced to like 2.5 years. And the same day he got sentenced, the bank robber got like 30. So there never was, and no one would ever touch the case. So
did he ever harm your mother?
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah, he gave her a black eye, and like I remember her having a black eye and driving to her parents, crying, and us in the car.
Do you miss him?
No. I mean, it was a long time ago. And I doubt he was, like I'm a born again Christian. I doubt he was born again unless something happened before he got murdered. So.
And is your mother alive?
Yes.
And she's doing well?
Yeah, she's remarried. Yeah, she lives in Pennsylvania. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Once you hit that wall of 15 years old, him dying, you said you began doing a lot of drinking. Do you think subconsciously you did that because in a lot of ways you did miss having the relationship fostered, and you tried to duplicate who he was in drinking?
Wow, I never thought of that I was trying to duplicate that. I look back and think I was just running from pain, and I didn't want to feel pain. And that's how I dealt with it. And also when I went back to school after he died, no one said anything. But you know who said something? The kids who were the ones that got high and everything. Oh, I'm sorry, I heard about your dad and all this. They were the only ones that said it. So I hooked up with them. And yeah.
The reason I ask, my brother was an alcoholic as well.
Mm-hmm.
We lost him early, but he died from
the
results of kidney failure and everything else that shuts down when you drink too much.
Yeah.
I don't think I recall ever seeing my brother without a bottle in his hand.
Wow.
Just walking around, but he constantly had a bottle and a cigarette. That was what I remember of him.
Mm-hmm.
Not a bad guy, just that's what he did.
Right.
Did it ever cross your mind that the thing you were doing at 15, your father had been doing for the same reason?
Yes, and that helped me walk through forgiveness, because his sister died in a car accident at 15 years old. My grandmother had a child die 6 months with a crib death. His dad died prematurely, and when his sister died, his mom, I think, lost it, and she blamed the sister's death on him because he didn't let her wear some shirt, a big overgrown shirt. Like, he said no to his sister. And, so yeah, he didn't grow up in the best household himself. Yeah.
We pass a lot of hurt down because we don't want to identify where it began. This drinking is, I don't think it's random that's the choice that you picked for your covering.
Mm-hmm.
I think subliminally you wanted something else to identify with your father on. And the drinking was it, because you saw him do it. Not that you wanted the result of, I want to be an alcoholic, but it's the one thing I know that he did that I can do too. And the side effect was that it helped you cover up what the adverse reaction of it, which was crying all the time because of it. It became a salve for you.
Right.
But the thing about salves is that it doesn't always attack the cut. He didn't get
Right.
it stitched up. He just kind of left the wound open and put some stuff in it and said, "Oh, it'll be fine now." That's what drinking does, and you found that out pretty quickly. Um,
Mhm.
when you had um, finally gotten married um, and had your son, was he? Um, did he suffer with mental problems that you could see prior to your husband's death, or before, or only when it happened? Only when the death happened?
No, no. By 6 months old, he had pervasive developmental disorder. I was watching like two other little kids at home, so I could be at home with my son, and I noticed he wasn't doing developmentally what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because when he was born, it was like 10 on the APGAR score. They used to give you this APGAR score, and it was like perfect. But it ended up him needing occupational therapy, speech therapy, going to special classes at 3.5 years old. But the schizophrenia came 2012. His dad died 2003. But I think the trauma came in with, I believe some other things happened to him. And I think all that's pushed down in him. And yeah, I mean, I've been praying and crying out for him to be set free from this. I believe some things happened to him. Mentally ill people are very vulnerable population,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah. So I believe, and also I believe that second marriage did traumatize him.
Do you blame yourself for that?
Um, I I don't. I forgave myself, and I apologized to both of my kids, telling them they were right. I should have listened to them. I thought they were just kids that didn't want their mom to remarry. They were right. These kids knew everything. Yep.
So you had two, a daughter and a son.
Yes.
How's the daughter doing right now?
My daughter lives in Los Angeles, California. She's a realtor in Beverly Hills, and she was knocking it out of the ballpark, doing really well. I
Still
think it's
COVID?
tougher, right? Yeah, even during COVID. The thing there is they don't put flyers out. Like here in New Jersey, they door knock. So you know me, as a mom, I'm praying for my daughter every day. And honestly, I'd like to see her get out of LA because,
Well,
again,
yeah,
I'm
it's
praying
LA.
all the time.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, it's LA.
Yeah.
Um,
She loves it. She likes it.
I want to talk about your son for a brief second here. Does he ever talk when he is lucid? Does he ever speak about his father?
No,
Never breaches the topic at all.
no, I bring it up and
Does he
I
remember
look
him?
at things. Yeah. And I'll show him pictures. He looks away real quick. Yeah.
Does he remember him?
Yes, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
they had a fine relationship?
Well, yeah. They had a good relationship. He was the best dad anybody could ask for. He was always doing things with his kids or whatever. My son, though, had behavior issues. We went to specialists to help with him, and we were ready. The specialist we went to said, "I feel like smacking your son." Okay, so it made us feel a little bit better, that we were being pushed, to the limit. It affected my daughter too. My daughter does not have like a relationship with my son. She said, "Mom, if something happens to you, he'll be well taken care of, but I can't handle it."
Yeah.
And that's been a painful thing for me.
No. So you've had two husbands, you said?
Yes.
Okay. And the first one that died, is that his children or no?
Yes.
Those are his.
Yes.
And that's the one you said. So both daughter and son are with the first husband.
Yes.
How was his relationship with that husband?
My
Your sons.
son, yeah, good. Like I said, Keith, my first husband, was a good husband. He loved me. We were a Christian family. We did everything together. We spent time together as a family. That's why this was so heartbreaking. He was a good father. He was a softball coach. He took his kids. He taught volunteer swim lessons and took his kids every weekend. So it was a big loss for them.
Mm-hmm. And so the picture you were talking about was a second husband?
Yeah. My second husband never should have happened. To me, I don't want to get too spiritual because I don't know what kind of audience you have. But to me, it was a spiritual attack to destroy me, and it almost did.
Hmm. Well,
And not only that, kill me.
everything is
Yeah,
an attack, and it's built to do that.
yeah.
Does your son talk about his actual dad, his blood dad?
No, no, but he's got a mix of schizophrenia and pervasive developmental disorder, so it's not unusual. They're not, real talkative about stuff like that. That's part of the like pervasive developmental disorder. I mean, it's what it is. They're not
Hmm.
that communicative, except for when they want something, that kind of thing.
And he's how old now?
36.
36.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh. And you take care of him full time?
No, he's in a group home.
Okay.
Yeah. And what happened is over the years, my ministry shifted to also, all of a sudden, God put on my heart, do pizza night over there with those guys. And I would take them out. There's 7 guys in the house. We just did a water baptism for Antonio, who's in the house. It's interesting. All these guys in this house have been traumatized. Antonio, he doesn't have any parents. Okay. And that movie Blindside,
Hmm.
he called, I talked to him almost every day. He called me and he said, "Oh, Roberta, I watched this movie Blindside." He goes, "I think that's you. You're the white lady that kind of took me into your family, and now I'm part of the family." And he calls me mom. And I love him. My sister met him so far, and I said, "This is part of our family now." And you know, and they don't have anyone, but they are, I encourage people to reach out to mentally ill group home people, because these people are like throwaways and they have so much to give. And, I get them walking, I play music on my phone, Eye of the Tiger, they love it. And they, like, one more time around the track, guys, one more. Otherwise, they sit since COVID and do nothing all day long.
Wow.
Yeah. So if anyone wants a ministry, it's out there.
You at 15 lost your father, very horrific manner. You went into the alcoholism and drugs to cope.
Mm-hmm.
When did that break?
After I got married and met my first husband, Keith, the good guy, he never was a drinker. We were both like partiers. And then he said, when he asked me to marry him, he goes, "I don't want to do all this anymore. Let's live right, raise a family." I was the one that dragged my feet. I'm like, "Oh, okay." So we got married and everything. But what happened? Guess what happened? I started feeling the pain. I'm not numbing it out anymore.
You have to face it.
Yeah, I have a husband I have to give to. All of a sudden, I realized how empty I was at forgiving. And then when you have a child, that's when things really come out, because you have to give to that child. And what I found happening, rage was coming out, depression. So I had to get into some kind of counseling and help. I went to a 12-step program, and believe me, I know Jesus is the one step, and that's really where God brought me. But I met a wonderful woman counselor there, who got me in touch with what this pain I was feeling was about. Now, when she told me my pain was from my father, I'm like, "What? That happened like way back here." And she goes, "No, this is about your father." And all of a sudden, she had me just start journaling all your memories growing up, and then she'd have me read it back to her. I'd be bawling my eyes out. And meantime, we also started going to a wonderful spirit-filled church. Met in the pastor's basement of their home. It was a home church. And I got deliverance ministry. And this one time I was, I'm just going to tell you guys, you can believe it or not believe it. I was laying on the floor for 2 hours shaking under the power of God. All I kept hearing God saying is, "I'm healing your daddy pain." And there were major changes after that. God just kept ministering. But my whole life, I've gotten help for myself when I need it. I was in a deliverance church for years. I would go to the deliverance team for prayers, and then God called me to do deliverance ministry. That's part of my ministry too, and I did it at the women's rehab and in the jail for 6 years, 8 years, once a week.
No,
So
I'm fully aware of the deliverance thing. My wife went through that as well.
yeah,
Your story about your father is the one I really want to focus on, because he's kind of keeps pushing that in front of me for some reason. So I'm gonna
hmm
keep going at that particular topic here for a second. Have you ever gotten to the point where you could admit to yourself that um, the relationship that you had with your father was one that you should have sought after more?
no, I really didn't, because I just feel like I was born into this situation
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have a choice about it. And it wasn't a pleasant circumstance. Now, I have a sister and brother that are younger than me. It was different for them because there was a point before my dad got murdered where he stopped drinking for a very short period of time. So they may remember some different things. For me, being the oldest in that household, it was different.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really can't think of a lot of pleasant memories of growing up. My dad was also a carpenter. He would build these nice houses, but our house had a no front door. We had to literally jump out the front door. Like the steps weren't there because he never really got to it. And we lived in a neighborhood where the families would go on vacation with their nice station wagons and ride by. And I'd always be like, I know something's not right here. Like, we're not doing that. You know, we would go on vacation with our grandparents to the beach, but my dad would never come.
Do you believe that that was a reflection of his love?
Probably to some degree, yeah.
Do you believe that?
Um, no, like, I believe he didn't know how to love somebody because he didn't get the love, you know? And that's why my first husband, when he would say all this good stuff to me, it was healing. And I finally was able to receive it because I didn't get that. And it was very hard for me to give that. You know, I was pushing away because I didn't have it to give, but then God healed me.
The reason I'm saying that is I'm going based on me, on my adventure as a father.
Mm-hmm.
I call it that because it's been up and down. A lot of people can look at my children's life and think that I'm not loving them as much as other people love their kids because of what they have or don't have. They could look at the house I live in and think the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does for me as a father is perpetuate my ill thinking of myself. And in my ill thinking of myself, I used to find coping mechanisms to try and beat that person up more because I started to believe it. And it had very little to do how I was raised. It had more to do with how I was perceived in my older days.
Mm-hmm.
So one ill thought begat another until it became a cascade effect. And then before too long, I was worthless to people because I wasn't viewing myself in the light of what I knew I was doing. I took it as a slight, and that slight became resentment, and the resentment became a searching out for a vice.
Mm-hmm.
And as a male, the vice makes us feel as though we have a tangible reason for feeling the way we feel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm an alcoholic. Now I have a reason to hate myself.
Right.
And that perpetuates itself because the more you drink, the more you hate. The more you drink, the more people hate you, the more they reinforce that you should hate yourself. And the more you feel like you should hate yourself, the more you drink.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My problem wasn't the drinking. was something else, but it was just as binding.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know what your father's mindset was, but it sounds an awful lot like from you just telling me about how the house's situation was, and
Mhm.
um, that he felt inadequate in the household because there was no tangible source of approval within the home. But other people can give him that by paying him to do a job, um, hiring him to do a job. That was me. I had a
Mhm.
job. I felt some sort of worth, even though I felt completely worthless on the inside because I knew my personal life. And it reflected in my personal life, but it didn't reflect in my job life. My job life was flawless. I would
Mhm.
do work, and people would think, man, he's the best worker in the world out there. And then people would look at the home situation, nowhere near the kind of OCD I had outside the home.
Mhm.
But that was a self reflection. It had nothing to do with my mom. I lost my dad too at 7.
Oh,
And
sorry.
that was traumatic. That was absolutely traumatic. I hated God for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, my dad and I had a great relationship, awesome relationship, the same kind of thing I have with my kid. But the hurt triggered something detrimental in me that I didn't take to God.
Mhm.
And it later perpetuated itself to the point where I became not something even I didn't want to hang out with, but I was
Mhm.
stuck with me. Suicide, that kind of stuff crept in.
Mhm.
Um, it almost strikes me as though your father had a innate sense of self worthlessness. It seemed played out in his home with the people that should love him, but he didn't feel loved by them, or he didn't give enough. Like I said, it's a cycle. You
Yes.
don't feel love, and then if you don't feel love, then you hate yourself. You drink, and the more you drink, the more you people out there in the home hate you. So it comes back again, and the drinking happens. You hate you, drink. They hate you. You hate you, drink, and that's how it becomes something that he didn't want to bind with you with because he didn't think it would be possible in his mind. It's not. It can't happen. One, I drink.
Yeah. I
Well, I'm
think
an
you
alcoholic.
I think you hit the bullseye, because that my mom has even said that. She said everyone thought your dad was wonderful except himself.
Hmm.
And he was a very skilled person. He had blueprints. He had the gift to do be an architect, but he was offered jobs and stuff, but it didn't work
He
because
didn't
he
feel worth it. Yeah, he didn't
right,
feel like he should
exactly.
get it. Yeah,
Exactly.
you unlike you take I'd take a promotion, foreman. Yeah, I'd be a foreman. Yeah, I'll take that. But I stopped just short of doing enough to become a manager or assistant manager or head lead tech or something like that because that would feel it negated my now solidified view of myself. And
Yep.
and as stupid as it sounds, it created in me a if I get that, then I have to start having some sort of self-worth.
Mhm.
And I literally didn't see myself as having any self-worth. I just couldn't see myself. And that happened young.
Yep.
And I put it off as people just saying, "Oh, you're best. Just you're fine. Stuff. Don't look at yourself that way." And that's how everybody would look at it. They
Mhm.
didn't know how much I beat myself up on the inside.
Mhm.
And then fast forward to having kids, you can't take that time. There is no room for you to do that. None. Um, Even with your wife, there is no room. It feels there is room. I know, but it
Mhm.
feels like there is no opening, no avenue, and you shouldn't bring it to them because they should be the ones that should be comforted by you.
Right.
And so we end up doing the complete opposite in anger because of how much we loathe the fact that we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. So instead of taking up the mantle and doing it, we throw it
Yep.
further away and hate ourselves for it and just be okay with people hating us.
Yep.
Um, your son, um, even with the mental issues, not wanting to look at a certain picture is displaying the same thing.
Mhm.
Um, where he lost the one thing that he really, really bonded with his dad.
Yep.
Um, and then in his mind internalized the actions thereafter by you as I'm not worth it, I'm not enough. And then since I'm not enough, whatever little issue I had, I can finally give into mentally, and it's becoming a roaring flame in his mind, and then other things set in. While it may not be drugs, it's
Right.
still it's something else. You being in ministry, though, I see that more of an assurance from God to you that I have not turned my back. I have not. I've given you this task at hand because it is something that you are going to be able to help other people with as you work through it,
Yeah.
to see me more, not to get out of it, because not everything. Paul still had a thorn in his side. He still had he still had that thing in his side he couldn't get rid of. Asked him to get rid of it, he didn't get rid of it. We don't know what that was, but it was something that he asked to get removed, and it never got removed.
Right.
And I think for a lot of us, including yourself here at this point, you are put in a position to help other people while your tank may be running with a hole in it. And that's a chore.
Right.
But he didn't ask you to weld the hole, and he's never been asking us to weld that hole. He's going to have to take care of that in his time. But I see this dynamic between you and your son now, where you're having to try and spill some of yourself out in multiple different directions. And I think it's more of a lesson to show you quite possibly where your father probably was. And what he didn't have was the tool of God. You know, the difference between going through something of loss and going through a life of pain is not the events, but how you handle those events.
Yes.
And he's given you that avenue of delivery to handle those events just perfectly, because you're going through a lot. Dead father, broken marriage, and children with issues.
Yeah.
It's a trifecta of what would normally ruin the normal person.
Right.
So I want to talk more about your ministry. I'm going to show everybody your Facebook. If you guys are not following her, because you probably would never heard of her before. This is her. This is her YouTube. I'm going to put the link in the comment section so people can find it. Please go watch her stuff. It seems to have some really good stuff on there. I'm going to go through it completely after we're done here. Give us a short synopsis of what you're hoping to accomplish with your YouTube channel, and we'll get to the wrapping up.
Okay. All right. So the YouTube channel, I haven't put a video up in 9 months. But actually today somebody commented on something, and I'm like, oh, I probably should get back to doing those, because just thinking about this show, Marlon, it made me think I do have a lot to say about a lot of these things I've been through, and other people have been through these things. Like my husband, my good husband, he died of a rare blood disease, and he was dead in 8 months. So I was thinking I could even do a video about grief, do some grief videos, because I ended up getting certified in grief recovery. I ended up getting my license as a counselor to help, because I had to help myself and my kids, because there was nothing. I didn't want to go to a grief group and everyone sit around and bawl. I wanted help, I wanted help. And I ended up getting ordained, because they said for protection, you should be ordained, because you could talk about the Bible, because you're going to talk about Jesus. And that all happened. And yeah, so, I mentioned in the videos too, when I found out the Lord had given me a dream about my husband who died, the good one. And the Lord showed me in the dream that his assignment was over, but yours isn't. And then I started asking the Lord, what is my assignment? And slowly but surely, he opened doors. My cousin was in prison for 25 years. And he got out. Me and my first husband used to visit him. He got out of prison. I was the only one in his life. I was a believer. He got saved. I felt, my husband had died. He's not coming to my house. So I got to find him a place. And I found him a place in Easton, Pennsylvania, homeless shelter. I go there on Thanksgiving to pick him up, to take him to my mom's for Christmas with me and my kids. And he said, hey, can you come in? They want someone to pray over Thanksgiving dinner. I go in, I pray. The head of the homeless shelter said, hey, we need you. Who are you? What do you do? I said, I'm a minister. He goes, hey, could you come here? Could you come here and do something or whatever? And the next thing I know, I'm doing Bible study. We're doing monthly outreaches. And from there, somebody came to my Bible study, robbed a bank. I went to visit him in the local prison there in Easton. And the next thing, I'm doing grief recovery. His mom dies in prison. This guy, we got him out of jail. We got him a job. He went into management. Okay. Unfortunately, years later, he went into cocaine, but now he is doing well. Just different things that happened. We had so many experiences. God opened the door to the women's rehab. Like I was saying before, the prison, it went to the women's unit. The chaplain there, I got to know him going in to see my friend, and he said we could use you on the women's floor. Then the women's rehab, I just went to an open house. It opened by my house, and the next thing, it's like they needed people to do Bible study. I felt God saying do it, but we pushed to have deliverance there weekly and meet with the ladies, and we saw people get set free from lesbianism, addiction, pornography, just stuff. And I always had a team of people with me, and we would rotate teaching the Bible. But I want to share all that because I want to give people hope. Ask God what your assignment is. And even to this day, because in 2020, all that changed. Now I go to senior housing, I go to the group home, and I lead an overcomers group. But the thing is, I just keep saying, Lord, let me complete all my assignments until it's my time to go. Don't let me leave here without completing everything I'm on this planet to do. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I want to encourage whoever watches this to pray that, because we all have something that God wants to do. Yes, exactly.
I think that's why he said to make sure you're making your calling sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate that, of asking him what the assignment is, not assuming you know what the assignment is and just doing what you want because it feels good.
Right.
I don't think that'll ever work out. You might have, it's like a 0.01% success rate that you'll hit what he wants on your own, but it's very, very low.
Right. And I will add, doing ministry. Now I do all my ministry outside of the church. I was a 501c3. I got out of it last year. I'm outside of the church. My church is McFiles. It's Chris McDonald. I'm a moderator on that show. That's my church.
So that's where you know me from.
Yes, that's where I know you from, Marlon. Yep.
I'm supposed to be on Thursday, I think, actually.
Oh, good. Well, I'll watch the replay if it's on late because I go to bed at 10. He usually has.
No, this one will be during the day because I can't make. Of course, because of Too Strong, I can't make the same time frame that he's on. So.
Yeah, and you know what? I encourage people. I didn't ask to be a moderator. I was just in the chat room. The Lord gave me a dream about Mark Taylor. That's how I ended up on that show. And I felt like the Lord said, go in the chat room. I was never in the chat room. I'm in the chat room. A few weeks, all of a sudden, I see that wrench by my thing. And somebody said, oh, congratulations, you're a moderator. I'm like, I am. This is what I'm talking about. And it's a full surrender. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you something. When I started at that homeless shelter, I was broken. I had a homeless guy say, wow, you've been through something. I see the pain in your eyes. I'm like, wow, they see it. But I started hanging out with the people at the homeless shelter. After Bible study, I didn't go home. I said, I love you guys. I like you better than the church people. You're actually nice, you know, and you're real.
Because they're genuinely lost.
Yes.
And they know it.
And the same with the group home guys. Yeah, they got some mental issues, but I will tell you, I love them. I love them.
You got to question who has the real mental issues at that point, huh?
What's that?
You got to question who really has the mental issue at that point.
Right.
The church or the crazy people.
Right.
It's a wonder why he hung out with all those people when Jesus was around. He hung out with some of the more, what we would consider local people. You got to start questioning, is that a hint? Yeah, it's a hint. It's a definite hint. Take it and run with it because it's a hint.
But do you see how God did that? My son was one of those broken people. My dad was one of those broken people. I was one of those broken people. And that's why I have a heart for the broken people. Right?
He puts you in the way you needed.
I was crying last night when I get a call about my son that we may involuntarily commit him. You know, when you're a mother, father, that's heartbreaking news. You know? And so I'm not going to say I have arrived. I'm still walking through pain and trials now. And this is life. For some of us have more trials than others. That's for sure. But You know, it's kind of like Chris just did a couple weeks ago about the storm. If you're not in a storm, one's coming, right?
Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, I want to thank you. Like, this was a earth-shattering one for me because your life mirrors a lot of the things I've been through myself. And
Oh,
it's always
wow.
good to know that I'm not by myself in the kind of situations I've dealt with, and to see someone else on the outside of the first phase and is now on the inside of the second phase,
Hmm.
going through and trying to pop out on the other end that is really, really, really appreciated to have that um, brought to the limelight. I want to sincerely thank you um, for doing that with us. If you can, there is one thing I want to ask of you to do for those of us here.
Yeah.
Um, uh, when you do get a chance to view this later, if you can just share it so people can get this, because they need to see this. I'll send you the link for the show, the YouTube channel show, and I'll send it to you. If you
Okay.
can just get that shared around
Okay.
your platforms, that would be absolutely amazing. Um,
Okay.
so, guys, again, thank you guys for being here. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for all the comments I have seen. It just that there's no room necessarily in this show to um, bring up a lot of comments, but I am seeing them. I'm not ignoring you. Um,
Mhm.
I wish you the absolute most blessed time in your ministry, and I pray that God uses it in the most powerful possible way to reach as many as you possibly can. It's needed. We're in that time where it's all hands on deck. We're
Amen.
almost to the finish line. It feels like, but we have to start running like we are going to be out of breath. By the time we're out of breath, we're past the finish line, so we'll be fine.
Amen. And Marlon, I want to encourage you to keep exposing and bringing the truth, because that's needed as well. And I know I put some controversial stuff on my Facebook wall, but not like you guys. And I will say it is needed, and
Yeah,
it's not an easy ministry because people hate you. But I
they do.
encourage you to keep that going.
Well, we will. Thank you very
All
much.
right. Thank you.
And for the rest of you, as I always say, wisdom calls to you from the street. Please, please, please find wisdom. Peace.